Today, we're going to dissect a very precarious peace. As of late 2025, there is technically a ceasefire in Gaza, but as we'll see, the situation on the ground is anything but stable. Our focus is really on this core tension between the diplomatic agreement on paper and the incredibly volatile reality that people are living every single day. And this is the central paradox, isn't it? On one hand, you have a formal agreement that's keeping all-out war at bay. But on the other, there's this constant, simmering conflict, diplomatic talks that are going nowhere, and a humanitarian crisis that threatens to boil over and unravel the whole thing. It's a very, very fragile balance. So this is the critical question we have to ask. Is this the beginning of a real, durable peace, or is it just a pause before the next round of fighting? By digging into the facts on the ground and, just as importantly, unpacking the competing stories each side is telling, we can get a much clearer picture of where this is all heading. All right, here's our roadmap. We'll start with how this truce is already under so much strain. Then we'll dive into the accusations and violations flying back and forth. After that, we'll look at the diplomatic angle, the humanitarian crisis, the ripple effects across the whole region. And finally, we'll ask, what's the path forward? Okay, first things first. To really understand what's happening now, we have to realize this isn't happening in a vacuum. The current ceasefire is just the latest attempt in a long, repeating cycle of agreements that either fail or just don't last. I mean, just look at the timeline for 2025. You get a hopeful agreement in January, it completely falls apart by March. A new proposal in May gets rejected, then the current ceasefire gets signed in October. But by December, it's already being described as floundering. This pattern tells you there are some deep structural problems that make it incredibly difficult for any peace to hold. And that brings us to the very heart of the instability right now, this constant storm of accusations. Each side is blaming the other for breaking the truce. And in this environment, the truth itself becomes just another weapon in the conflict. So you essentially have three completely different realities being presented. Israel says Hamas is violating the truce, pointing to specific attacks on its soldiers. Hamas, on the other hand, says Israel is to blame, alleging hundreds of violations, including blocking aid. And then you have the United States, sort of in the middle, just calling for calm without pointing a finger. It's not just a disagreement over facts, it's a fundamental conflict over how to interpret reality itself. Now let's try to put some numbers on this. According to the government media office in Gaza, this is the number of alleged Israeli violations between October and December 2025, 875. And they claim that as a direct result of those alleged violations, 411 Palestinians were killed. But then you flip the coin. To understand the Israeli perspective, on one single day, November 2nd, the IDF reported this many ceasefire violations by Palestinian militants: 7. The gap between these numbers is just immense. It shows you that the two sides are not just disagreeing, they are constructing and living in fundamentally different realities. Okay, so away from the daily clashes, there's another battle going on behind closed doors. We're talking about a very high-stakes diplomatic game, where mediators are trying to push this beyond just a temporary pause in the fighting. And the big idea on the table is something they're calling Phase 2. The goal here is ambitious. It's not just about stopping the shooting, it's about building a whole new governing structure for Gaza, run by experts, dramatically increasing aid, and bringing in an international security force. It's a grand plan to try and build a real foundation for peace. But, and this is a huge but, there's a major roadblock. Israel has put down a firm precondition. They will not even begin to negotiate Phase 2 until the body of the last Israeli hostage is returned from Gaza. Now, critics immediately call this hostage politics, a way to stall indefinitely. But for many Israelis, this isn't a political tactic. It's seen as a sacred, non-negotiable duty to bring their people home. So let's shift our focus now to the human cost, because it's just devastating. And just like everything else we've looked at, even the basic facts about human suffering have become a battleground. You have major international groups like the UN sounding the alarm in the strongest possible terms. When they use language like this, warning of severe hunger, they are painting an incredibly grim picture of the reality on the ground. But even that warning is being fiercely debated. Aid organizations on the ground say their data shows extreme food insecurity. Israeli officials, however, push back hard. They argue the data is flawed, that Hamas is interfering, and that the whole methodology is politicized. It actually boils down to a technical and very heated dispute over whether the situation meets the strict definition of the word famine. So what can we say for sure? Well, here's the crucial point. You can argue about terminology all day long, but the underlying reality is this. Getting perfect data from a war zone is nearly impossible. However, every single independent benchmark we have all points in the same direction, that the people in Gaza are facing extreme hardship, far beyond any normal baseline. Now, it's so important to remember this conflict is not happening in a bubble. The shockwaves are spreading far beyond Gaza, destabilizing the entire Middle East, and now they're even disrupting the global economy. Just look at the Red Sea. Houthi forces in Yemen are attacking cargo ships, saying it's to support the Palestinians. This has forced massive shipping companies to avoid the Suez Canal and go all the way around Africa. That means higher costs and longer delays for goods worldwide. A localized conflict has effectively metastasized into a global trade and security problem. And yet, in the middle of all this turmoil, you see these small but powerful signs of people just trying to live their lives. In Bethlehem, thousands of Christmas pilgrims returned for the first time in 2 years. It perfectly captures the complex mood of the region, this incredible desire for normalcy, living side by side with the constant trauma and the fear that it could all fall apart tomorrow. So, after looking at all these pieces, the history, the competing claims, the stalled diplomacy, the regional chaos, what can we really say about the path forward? The conclusion is pretty hard to avoid. This ceasefire is hanging on by a thread. It's being pulled in 3 different directions at once, by the violence on the ground, the political deadlock, and the turmoil spreading across the region. Any one of these pressures could be the thing that finally snaps it. And this leaves us with one final and, I think, profound question. In a landscape where everyone is operating with their own set of facts, where truth itself is used as a weapon, what's the formula? What does it actually take to turn a flimsy, floundering truce into a peace that can actually last? That remains the ultimate challenge.